Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Gathering Place. I'm Tom Ray. So good to have you to join us today. Please do us a favor and like on this, comment, subscribe. We'd love to hear from you and your thoughts about this discussion, as well as any discussion in the future or the past. So chime in when you're ready. Hey, I want to introduce to you our hosts of the Gathering Place. We have Ken Shelton
It's
and
me.
we have Ben Bookie. And we have Talora Bookie in the house. And so come on in, take your shoes off, stay a little while, and we'll
Beverly
talk with you.
Hillbillies. There you go.
Yes, that's right. So I don't know. Ben, do you want to take it away?
Sure.
Yeah.
So, first of all, if anybody ever wonders about the looks on our faces when we get on here and start this, it's because there's usually shenanigans going on right up until it says go.
It's tomfoolery.
Yeah,
It wasn't Tom today.
literally, yeah.
It was those two over there. But
I'm feeding off Ken's behaviors.
but we could change that, but that's what we're talking about today. So I want to change, but and fill in the blank with whatever reason we give. I mean, we all have. I don't know how. It's too hard. I want to change, but I don't want to change, right? Or sometimes it's just like it costs us too much, or we feel like it's going to cost us too much to make change. And so we've talked about change before. We've talked about a lot of things, but so you'll hear some things I know that we've mentioned before. But Talor and I went to Grace Story yesterday. They had a marriage conference, and it should be available online if you didn't get to go. But in our table there, we always get to talk to lots of people. But inevitably, when we're going to a marriage conference, that topic comes up. And I mean, we work with people and change for a living. I mean, that's what we're there for. And so change is hard. And so we're going to talk about that. And just if you have questions, though, like Tom said, drop them in the chat. You can message us in the middle of whatever. We'll see it. So to kind of kick it off, one of the things that came up at the conference yesterday, and we've talked about it on here. I mean, even when we talk about why we do this, the Gathering Place, I mean, because we're looking at like really healing for the whole person, right? And so that was one of the things that had come up yesterday, and I've seen it before. And there's actually a thing called whole person therapy. And so I was, at the end of the day, I mean, I'm not trained specifically in that, but that's what I do as a therapist, and Tor does that as a therapist, and Tom and Ken in their roles as pastors and coaches and all these things, that's what we all do. And biblically, it's there, right? And we all know this verse, or maybe we should if we don't, but I'm going to read the version from Luke. So Luke 10:27, and Jesus is talking to the experts in the law, right? And asks, what's written, the expert asks, what's written in the law? How do you read it? And he said about what he has to do to inherit, I can't even talk, inherit eternal life. And Jesus says to him, love the Lord your God with all your heart, with all your soul, with all your strength, and with all your mind, and your neighbor as yourself. And so when we look at that, I mean, we see this whole person experience embodied even in that command. Relationally, we see that, right? Love the Lord your God, love your neighbor, love yourself. So we see that. We see heart, mind, soul, strength. So we have the physical, mental, emotional, spiritual. And so that's how God operates, right? God is if you like theology, right? When they talk about God, they often talk about the simplicity of God. Not that God is simple, but we have to break down God into parts, right? God is love. God is great. God or good. God is gracious. God is merciful. He is just. He is all of these things because our finite brains cannot comprehend God, but God is all of those things in one, right? In and himself, like none of those things are separate. And so I think for us, right, like as image bearers and in perhaps in the original creation, like we were meant to really be holistic like that, sort of. But we have to separate those pieces out for our own understanding, but also bring them back in together to really have healing. And so that's my basis, I guess you could say, of that. But I do want to throw out this just because I find it interesting. And I was looking at different things about whole person therapy when I was preparing for today. A lot of the whole person therapists do not address the spiritual.
Mm.
So don't go to those people because they're missing out. And
Well,
you'll be missing
they
out.
might address the spiritual with some sage just before you come
Yeah.
in.
Yeah.
Just to sort of clear the air of any bad energy.
Mhm.
When you were talking, Ben, I was thinking about how in James, it talks about our life is just a vapor, right? So in that little bit of a vapor, there's all of these things that happen. It's just, I don't know, it just kind of amazed me thinking about that. But God never changes, which is wonderful. But sometimes He likes to do something new. And I was thinking about Isaiah 43. I'm gonna have to put my glasses on. 18 and 19, where it says, "But forget all that is nothing compared to what I am going to do, for I'm about to do something new. See, I've already began. Do you not see it? I will make pathway through the wilderness, and I will create rivers in the dry wasteland." Um, which those two verses are some of my favorite verses. But God wants to do something new, so we have to change and we begin to acclimate into what He's called us into. Like Ben and I have had a lot of changes recently, and it's learning how do I fit into this place of change. When things are going on around you, it also encourages you to, right, fit into that whole, because it's going to be physical, it's going to be spiritual, it's going to be emotional, mental, la la la. Um, yeah, that's pretty much it.
Good. The verse that came to my mind when you were speaking, Ben, is Matthew 18:3. And Jesus is addressing his disciples and then also the Pharisees. And verse 1 says, "At that time, the disciples came to Jesus and asked, 'Who then is greatest in the kingdom of heaven?'" It's a very human, very this here and now moment kind of question with somewhere in the future implications, because it's hard to see the kingdom of heaven in the now in people's thinking. We tend to see it out there, and it's not. It's here. It's within us, right? But anyways, verse 2 says, "He called a little child to him and placed the child among them, and he said, 'Truly I tell you, unless you change and become like little children, you will never enter the kingdom of heaven. Therefore, whoever takes the lowly position of this child is the greatest in the kingdom of heaven. And whoever welcomes one such child in my name welcomes me. And if anyone causes these little ones to stumble because they believe in me, it would be better for them to have a large millstone hung around their neck and to be drowned in the depths of the sea.'" My goodness, woe to the world because of the things that cause people to stumble. Such things must come, but woe to the person through whom they come. You know, and you think about the things in our lives that need changing or that we want to change. You know, need and want may not be the same thing. Maybe there are things that need to change and there are things we want to change. But let's back up a little bit and widen the scope here and realize that human trafficking affects every single state in the Union,
The world.
and it involves children. Child sex trafficking is a major, major blight on our nation. And you think about what Jesus just told his disciples. If any one of you offends one of these little ones because they believe in me, they'd be better off to have a millstone hung around their neck and dropped into the sea. Talk about mafia. Cement boots, man. We're talking millstone around the neck. Jesus did not mix it up in any kind of special grace there. He just said it would be better for you. And you think about these people that are trapped, but then also the traffickers who the change that has to take place. And it's easy for us to say, well, whew, at least I'm not one of them. You know, I'm much better than they are. No, I mean, yeah, we're better in the sense that we don't do that with little children, but we have to bring the lens back again and look at ourselves and see the things that on a daily basis we are aware of that need change, whether it's, you know, I do not like to do the read the Bible through in a year thing. Now, some people say, that's no big deal, man. Don't worry about that. Well, you know, we all have our way of reading the Bible. I don't find it terribly inspirational to read something in the historical books and something in the Gospels, and then go to the prophets, and then go to the Psalms, and then do that every day. And my head's going, I'd rather, find a way to. So what I'm saying is, I want to change that little thing, but I can't change that. I've tried to change that over and over again, and I bought the 1 year Bible thing. I started at Genesis when I was a kid. Now, I've read the Bible, but I'm just saying as a pattern, like my dad would sit down every year and read the Bible through 2 or 3 times, but he read no other books unless they were written by Billy Graham or David Jeremiah. That's just my dad. He goes, I said, Dad, do you ever read a book of fiction? He said, I don't read fiction. I don't have time for fiction. Why would you read about play stuff when there's so much real stuff out there? Okay, all right, I hear you. I'm with you. No problem. No more discussion. We're just thinking in different wavelengths here. But he would buzz right through it. And if I started at Genesis, I'm okay. Exodus, I'm good. You get a little lost in the weeds of Leviticus. I kind of get tangled up there on an omer is the third part of an ephah. I don't know. I write that down. Keep your notes, okay? Because we're going to have a test on omers and ephahs. That's hard for me. All right, so here's my point that I'm very long and roundabout making. I have to change that, okay? Because my brain doesn't really work that way. Of sitting down and reading from A to Z. I can do that. I read every single day, and I read so much, but I read what I want to read. I know what happened in Genesis. I know what happened in Exodus. Boy, do I know what happened in Leviticus. Numbers? Oh, Deuteronomy. Then we go to Joshua, Judges, 1st, 2nd Samuel, and on we go, right? I know that. I'd much rather at this stage of my life, having read those things, when I'm praying to say, I wonder how David would have handled that. And then go and look up David and research the things about David and that's because it piques my interest. and also because it's where I am in that moment. Um, I need that. So my brain is wired to learn a particular way. I'm a visual learner, and I'm a man. And there's this rule in the universe that says men don't change anything unless they have to. Okay. we only change because our doctor tells us we're going to die. Our wife tells us we can't eat any more mashed potatoes. We, you know, I
What
don't know.
kind of illness do you have?
Yeah. No, it's like, things we change are because we have to change. And then once we've made the change, we're fine. But some changes are very difficult, nearly impossible to make because our brains are wired for survival and efficiency. And when you start a project, whether it's reading the Bible through or fixing a light switch or what, your brain automatically goes to the neural pathway that it most frequently goes through, the pattern it is accustomed to. It goes there. Your brain loves repetition. If you're doing a thing over and over and over again, people say, why do I have such a bad habit? I can't get rid of it. Because there's a road going into your brain and it goes, and it's been traveled so many times, your brain says, I know how to get there. Let's go. And you can't think up another way. It's like a tug of war. And in scientific psychological language, we would say it has to do with the neuroplasticity of the brain, right? That there's this tug of war. Now, the brain can morph, but it doesn't want to. It doesn't like to. It seeks rewards, and it doesn't see a reward on this new path yet because it's unexplored. And so, how am I doing, Ben and Talora? Am I close to the truth?
Uh-huh.
So, yeah, we just don't want to. That's really what it amounts to. We don't want to badly enough because we can't see the long-term benefit of this immediate change. Why? Why do I have to change that? What's the point? I'd rather get up in the morning and eat toast all day, because that's what I do, or whatever it is. Okay, I'm done. I'm not going to say anything else the rest of the time.
No.
Yeah, I personally, I think it's what we go for is the path of least resistance, right?
That's what I said.
Yeah,
I didn't hear that. Ken.
yeah, I didn't hear that either, but I know that that's what you're alluding to. It's a path of less resistance, and we just flow because it's something we can do without even thinking. Like a lot of us do as we drive these days. We don't think about turning on the blinker 100 yards before the turn or whatever. We just do it. It becomes second nature. But some of us even have adapted some bad habits in driving, but we still do it every day, and unless it's brought to our attention, we don't change. Which brings me to another thought: is why are we change? Why do we want change? Is it because the crowd we're following is influencing us, or we're feeling peer pressure to change, or is it a change that we want to do? I know in coaching, oftentimes it's if I can suggest something to someone, chances are they won't change. But if they come up with the idea and you're encouraging that, then they are more willing, more apt to change as a result of that. And so I think that's more powerful. James Clear has a book called Atomic Habits. And I encourage everyone to pick up that book and read it. It's fantastic, but it's about changing. And if you can do one thing, if you can change by 1% over the course of a year, now, not one day, right? You can't go to the gym for one day and then everything's great. That's 1%. No, but if you go to gym for 15 minutes every day, it'll make a big difference by the end of the year. And so that's what he's saying. But that other thing you were tapping onto earlier, Ken, when you were talking about the reward, James Clear also talks about that in his book, Atomic Habits, and that is doing things that seek reward, right? And learning a new habit. It takes what 45 days to get rid of an old habit, I think, right?
66 is the national average.
66. Okay. So it takes a minute for that to happen. But we got to start somewhere. So James Clear makes a connection for people to start small, right? Let's say you're wanting to go to the gym, so you get up at your 6 a.m. or whatever it is, and then you can go back to sleep. Okay, the next day, get up at 6 a.m., go and get in the car, and then come back in and go back to sleep. The next day or whatever, get in your car and drive to the location. You don't have to do anything. Just drive to the location and get into that habit, right? That's what he's talking about, is getting into a habit of doing something. And now once you show up at the gym, you're like, okay, since I'm here, I might as well work out. And then you can spend your 15 minutes, 2 hours, whatever it might be. But it's just getting the thing started. And a lot of times we don't want to change because we think of the massive work that's involved. But if we can start small, I have an acronym, by the way, that I've written for an article for churches. One of those things is SUI, SUI. Start where you are, use what you have, and improve the process, and then repeat. Right? Start where you are, use what you have, and improve the process. And so if we can do that, I think we can see more change happening. But here's a test for everyone that you can do right now. Take the garbage can, wherever it is in your kitchen, and move it to a different spot. And see how many times you go to the original spot to throw something away.
Right.
Right? You'll test yourself in that way. And once you do that, you move that thing over there, you're going, okay, it looks like I am a creature of habit. and so if you can move something, move it to a different area. Even I've talked to people who, when they're getting ready for work in the morning, they have their socks over here in this drawer. They have their underwear over here in this drawer. They have their pants over here hanging up in this closet or whatever. And it's just, they're always going all over the place instead of streamlining where everything is so that they can have it more smoothly. And so it's something we do out of habit. So there you go. Ken, I'm gonna tell on myself right now. You ready?
Yeah,
So
go for it.
For years, I never used a rag when taking a shower.
A washcloth?
Never not washcloth. Yes.
The wash rag?
Yes, just never did. And Ken, it started at your mom and dad's place back in the day when we went to Tennessee together.
Oh yeah.
Your mom gave me a wash rag to use. I'm like, okay, this is going to be the start of it. It took, I don't know, months or years in order for me to get into the habit of getting a wash rag before I get in the shower.
But you did shower, right?
I absolutely did shower. Yeah,
it's like clarifying. Yeah.
And use soap. And use soap. But my point is it took a while for me to get acclimated to doing it. You know how you get in the shower and now you got water on you. You don't want to get out of the shower and make a towel all wet so you can get a rag, And so, but I did that because I said, no, I'm going to learn this. I'm going to get it down.
The Sheltons were civilized. And you wanted to fit into the club. Peer pressure, my friend. That's what it was. Peer pressure.
That's it. But that's where it started. And I wanted to do that. So it took a long time, but I finally cracked the code and got to where I'm doing it all the time now. But
now your wife says, why do we have so many towels and washcloths in the laundry these days?
Yeah, exactly.
I Oh, I was gonna say I have two comments I wanted to make. The first thing is, in order for us to change a habit, whether bad or good, it takes about 21 days, 3 weeks. And so you don't want to do too many changes all at once because you're going to get overloaded and nothing's going to stick. Um, and then the other thing was to talk about the Isaiah scriptures, and the reasons why I brought those up is because as a Christian, sometimes God moves us. Sometimes we have to change. The biggest thing I noticed in a church is when they want to maybe change the lights or, the sound system or the carpet.
Danger,
Anybody?
danger, danger.
Yeah, yeah. Run. But
Oh,
that's
Amazon's here.
yep. But that's what happens is that it's these outside changes, not even the changes within us, but it prompts changes within us because all these outside changes, we have to either acclimate or, like you were doing, run, danger, go. So Ben and I have had some changes recently, and I know Ken knows this, but I just accepted a job as an executive director for a nonprofit mental health agency. It's just a short window of time. Yes, I accepted it. Thank you, thank you. It's for 15 minutes. It's very short.
a 15-minute job.
15 hours a week. So it's not going to like totally pull away from our private practice, but it's also a change and it's something you have to acclimate to. So and it affects your whole person. It's not just, okay, just got to mentally prepare this, but you have to, like there's physical things. I didn't mean it like I have to, like I'm doing physical labor or anything there, but you know what I mean? Like your body, just getting your body, the sleep, how am I going to work this out? Those kind of things. And so I just think change, sometimes it comes from the outer part of us, and then we just have to move into it. Like God says, behold, I'm doing something new. You're gonna have to change. I'm making the river and the
Desert. Yeah.
wilderness. Yeah. Yeah, desert. I am making it so you guys stop walking around this mountain because
I have a question. If you
yeah.
could make one change, each of us, if you dare speak these things, if you could make one change, what would it be? Ben?
How come I have to go first?
Okay. Laura.
I can't hear right now. What'd you say?
Only one.
Just one.
I mean, at the moment, I'd get this little thorn from the rose bush out of my finger, but because that's like there, I'll hold up.
Because you're a man and you have to.
But no, I think display my doctor yelling at me every year about losing weight, exercising, and all those things, right? I mean, physically, I would like to make it easier to lose weight. I don't know how that would happen, but I got ideas about it because of yesterday. So, but yeah, because like there's, I don't know. Can I do anything about my thyroid that would help? I don't know, but some people say you can't. Somebody was there yesterday talking about that, so I'm like, well, maybe that's worth exploring. So,
yeah. Hey, I used to weigh 275 pounds, and it was largely, no pun intended, because I had a very underactive thyroid.
Mm.
And when I started taking thyroid medication, which, back in the 80s and 90s, doctors typically, a man's GP, general practitioner, typically did not test the thyroid back then. They do now. But, my wife's OBGYN quit delivering babies because malpractice insurance just got crazy expensive. And so he opened up a family practice. So I started going to my wife's OBGYN. And first thing he did was check my thyroid. And I said, wow, nobody's ever done that. He said, that's why I'm doing it. And turns out that was a problem. And I take a lot of thyroid medication every day, and it's just something that has to happen. But anyway, tell Laura, how about you? What would be the thing you would change?
I mean, I
Okay,
think
here's,
getting
here's,
no,
here's,
no.
here's the point I'm trying
Yeah.
to make.
hmm
The idea of change is hard.
Yeah.
If you're put on the spot and people say to you, what do you want to change? We don't even know where to begin. And then when we do grab hold of a loose handle, it's something that is virtually impossible. For instance, if I could change one thing, I would grow a beard. But I can't grow a beard. So I'm not, I tried one time, I grew a goatee that was not in the least way convincing. And it was, I mean, I thought maybe people would comment on it, but they couldn't see it past the third row. It was, it was just too thin. I have an Indian beard, the old joke, Apache here and Apache there.
Apache.
All I've got. It just doesn't work. So that's how it is. Now, my dad had a pretty good beard, but my mom didn't. Thank the good Lord. So
She's
I
probably glad about
I
that.
got my mom's genes. My point is, change is hard to even think about. We don't know where we'd begin. It happens generally when we're in very introspective moments, alone, and we think about things we're unhappy about ourselves. When we have fallen or failed in a task or offended someone or something has happened and we realize, I see that as a pattern. I need to fix that. That's when we generally look at things because it's hard to be arbitrary about something that is so personal. We're asking ourselves to make arbitrary choices about things that will very personally affect us over a long time period. That's hard to do.
Mhm.
Yeah. One of the things you all might remember from your intro to psychology class back in the day was Maslow's hierarchy of needs.
Oh yeah. Mm-hmm.
And a lot of I mean, it's still used. I mean, there's some good stuff in here, but one of the things that keeps us from changing is those lower things haven't been met. The physiological needs. Do we have enough food? Do we have shelter? Do we have right? Are we just scraping by, right? I mean, and we can see this with people. People are like, why don't they change? Blah, 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 because they're trying to survive, right? We're not going to make changes per se when we're just trying to survive. It's hard to even think about what else you can do to survive. And then from there you get to safety needs. Like if you're not in a safe place, like physically, mentally, emotionally, even spiritually, it's really hard to make change because now you're really focused on protecting yourself. And then and as it goes on, like then we can move on to like love, belonging. We start to see these categories where okay, now we can actually start to make changes. And then they get into this esteem, and then like called it self-actualization. He added one right at the end of his life about spirituality, beyond even like the self-actualization thing. But when we think about change, like, am I actually in a place where like I can focus on that? Or am I focused on like I'm trying to get some food? I'm not safe where I'm at.
Well, I'm not safe where I'm at. There is a bug. There's a bug. So I just want to let everybody know that. Keep talking about it.
Ben to the rescue.
Yep.
In about 25 minutes.
Yep. I'm scared.
Well, hey,
pray for me. Ken, pray. No, just kidding.
A couple thoughts there. So I remember I was at working on church on staff as a worship pastor, and I decided to flip flop the stage. So I was playing on the right side of the stage, and I flip flopped it and put me on the left side of the stage, and the drums on the right side, and so forth. Just flipped the whole stage. I had people coming up to me angry that I had flipped our positions on the stage because they like to sit in a certain spot and see me from a certain angle.
You're
And
just,
even the
you know what? That's nothing. I turned all the pews in the opposite direction one time, all by myself. Go ahead. Sorry.
even the pastor was turning around and saying, Pastor Tom, Pastor Tom, because I wasn't in the normal place. So it messed everybody up. But that was the reason I did it, is to break that rut, that habit that we get stuck in sometimes, and we keep
Oh,
doing the
yeah.
same things
Sure.
the same way. And so just to flip that. Then on another note, men marry women hoping that they won't change, and they do. And women marry men hoping they will change, and they don't.
That's true.
Not too often.
Definitely a
And
problem.
so there's got to be some realistic thoughts in going into marriage, but and I think that brings a lot of stress actually on a marriage relationship when we're expecting this to happen and it doesn't, or we're expecting a change to happen and it doesn't, or it does, whatever. It makes a big difference. And it really challenges challenges us where we're at, and we got to do some self-reflection. Why does this bother me? Why is it that I want to see this other person change? Is it something I need to do? Is it them changing so that things will flow smoother in my life? I don't know, but
The question I ask is
yeah.
when change comes up is there a pill for that? Because if there's a pill for that, my insurance will cover it. And I want to take that pill, and then I don't have to worry about all the effort.
Exactly. Again, the path of least resistance, right?
Exactly.
Mhm.
That's
Exactly.
that's what we want. And but change can be difficult, but again, I think it's that reward that we got to put at the end of it. The carrot in front of the horse kind of thing, carrot at the end of the stick kind of scenario.
However, it has to be
Yeah.
a consistent reward. And that's where the challenge comes in, because
Right.
if it takes 21 or 66 or however many days it takes to form a new habit, uh, it's difficult for the human brain to just say, I'm going to do this for 66 days, and on day 67, this is going to happen, because I guarantee you that's an average, and it could be up to 200 days, and you don't get the reward on 67. You're going back to Hostess Twinkies, buddy. That's all I'm saying right now. You are going back to ding dongs. You're going to find whatever satisfies you right now. And
Yeah.
it's just how we're wired. So it has to be a daily payoff, which is where dopamine comes in. There has to be some good feeling about what you've done, unless of course you're in boot camp in the Marines. Then they don't care if you feel good about it. What's going to happen is, if you don't
You
do those,
can do anything if somebody's there forcing
they're
you, right?
kicking you out and sending you back to your mama, and all your friends are going to make fun of you.
Yeah,
Here-
on that
here-
note, my dad was instructed to kick the heels of the person in front of him in the military if they weren't marching in step.
Wow.
So he was stomping the heels of a person in front of him because they had to learn to get in step. And so sometimes that's happening, right? There was another thought that I wanted to share with you real quick, but it has fleeted this mind of mine. And so yeah, but yeah, he had to do that to force someone into change. So
So you can force, in other words,
Is
you
that
can
it?
force
Are you
things.
saying that's an idea? Oh, I'm sorry, Ken.
No, good. You're good. Go
no,
for it.
not necessarily.
Yeah, don't
Well,
rely on kicking
Maybe
people.
not.
Parents of our generation used negative pressure to create
Mm.
change in us. I
Yep.
mean, I was told to do a thing, and then if I had to be told again to do a thing, it was louder. And then if it came to number 3 time, there's going to be a problem, son. You know, it's not, there's no positive reward. The positive reward was my rear end was not going to be hurting. The negative reward was if I don't do that thing, it ain't going to feel good. And I know we've changed. We've become a kinder, gentler nation of parents, and we give Billy a timeout, and we say, "No, stop that." However, and you know what? Sometimes that works.
Yeah,
And
most of the time.
I have a friend. He's in another country. He's in Ireland. He's a pastor, and he's the most gentle person that I know of. He's a good leader, and he and his wife have 3 children. And I have witnessed him on numerous occasions. Lily, can you look at Daddy's eyes? What did I ask you to do? And did you do it? How come you didn't do it? Can you do it now so I don't have to ask you again? I would really appreciate that. Yes, Daddy. She goes and does it. He gets up and does another thing. And it's a quiet household. Instead of, I told you to pick up your dirty underwear. Oh. And that was to her husband. No.
I like that style, though. I mean, you know, to be able to do that.
No, but you know, if somebody's on your last nerve, baby, okay, your final run on the last nerve, there ain't gonna be no stooping down and get in your face. It's gonna be, I'm gonna whoop your butt if you don't get doing what you gotta be doing. You know, that's just, I think all of us have a little of that in us. And then when the company comes over, we're like, Lily.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Parent your child to what they need, right?
Yeah. So I think the point of that is have company over quite frequently.
All of a sudden, your kids are inviting people. No, Mom, I've already invited them.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I want to go back to that part about the rewards and the neural pathways, just because rewards are important. I tell people every day, rewards are important. Your brain, if you tell it is a reward, it will take it as a reward. So I drink a lot of coffee, but if I tell myself, if I do this, then I can have a cup of coffee, my brain believes that coffee is a reward, and I get all the dopamine from it. So you don't have to think hard to come up with your rewards. You just have to tell yourself whatever you're giving yourself is a reward. So don't be like, if I go run 5 miles, I can eat a quart of ice cream. You don't have to do that, but also with the neural pathways, right? Like, Tola's talking about like 21 days, like that's how long it takes to start building a new neural pathway and for it to start linking up. And the problem is all those old neural pathways stay in there. So even if you've done something for 3 years,
that's right,
all of a sudden that old neural pathway might get activated again.
Mm-hmm.
And, so because people get so discouraged, like, oh, well, I was doing so well. And then I just went back to, well, of course you did, because that's still there. You're not cutting it out of your brain, but you've got the other neural pathway. It's like, it's a little bit easier to get on board that one this time. But, but that's where, we're making change sound all discouraging. It takes forever. And you know what, but if it's important to you, at the end of the day, you will do it.
Right.
It might take a long time though. So, and Tora said this earlier, like, don't try to change too many things at one time. Your brain can handle like one, we're not. So take the pressure off and small changes.
So I haven't smoked since 2001. And I'm going to tell you that
I see you doing this a lot.
Yeah, cigarette smoking. Mm-hmm. Yeah, but it's hard because your brain actually, there's a chemical that it actually has to replace because the nicotine is replacing that chemical. So your body has to begin to create that chemical again. So even now, I have to, still make that effort to not want to smoke because sometimes it's like, if I could smoke and not become addicted, I may smoke, just
Well, you
because
seem to
it
hit
just,
her nicotine, baby.
yeah.
Well, you know
I mean,
what the holiness people of our generation, our parents' generation did?
mhm.
They made everything a sin.
Oh, yeah.
So is spiritualized all these behaviors. So, well, he's not going to heaven. He smokes. That's
Yeah.
all there is to that. Oh, he drinks a beer, bound for hell. That's just what it's over now. Don't hang around those people. They drink beer. Schlitz, that's their thing. It's not a thing anymore. But
Yeah.
we just sort of deify these things and make them a huge spiritual issue. Don't do that, people. Don't
Yeah.
do that. Don't read your Bible through because you think God is sitting up there in the heavens going, I said finish Leviticus by the 30th and you didn't. We're not going to pick up your garbage now. You have to decide that some things don't have eternal consequences.
Yep.
It's just
Yep.
keep everything in its lane. That's all I'm trying to say.
Mhm.
It's a physical
Yeah.
cigarette smoking is a physical change, right?
Yeah. And it was,
The way
I
you spend your
wasn't
money,
following
it's a
Christ
financial
then.
change. I mean,
I-
these things, there are professionals for them. Medical changes, physical changes, financial changes, And men, I think this is something that Talora and I have spoken of. Men have one great reward, and that is we want to feel something. We want to feel something. We want to feel good. We want to feel better. We feel good if good is the flat line, if it's the base. Well, okay, we want to feel better. So we do things that make us feel. And sometimes you get in some serious trouble for that.
Mhm.
I thought you were talking about respect, and then I thought Tom was going. In my mind, I had to change it because I thought Tom was going to start singing RESPECT, but that's not what you were talking about. So I had to change.
Yeah, there you go.
Oh,
I know
that-
change is hard because my wife went through the change and it seemed very difficult.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
And that was forced, right?
Yeah.
That was forced. But
Yeah.
there's Simon Sinek wrote a book several years ago called "Find Your Why." Right?
The what?
And sometime find your why.
Oh, find your
WHY.
why. Okay.
Yeah, find your purpose into why you're doing what you're doing. Right? And sometimes we don't know why we're doing it, and so because we don't find the reward in that. But finding purpose in what we do. Case in point, I just thought of this. My son Justin, he was in the Marines, and a lot of the times the drill sergeant would say, "Do this and do that," and my son didn't find the purpose. He didn't see the reason in it. But it didn't matter. He was told to do it. You do it. You don't question it. But he still butted heads so many times because he wanted to know why. Why do you want me to do it? It doesn't make any sense. This is stupid. Why pick things up over here and put them over there? There's no rhyme or reason. But the reason is I said so.
Right.
But a lot of us we don't react that way. We wanted to know why. And when we know our why, it helps us go after that change a little more uh, with tenacity to
Yeah.
go after it. But it's got to start someplace. And so yeah, everybody start small. Start someplace and begin to build on it. Your pathways that you have currently in your brain didn't develop overnight. It's been a habit, something you had to do. Think about water, how persistent water is, and how it just continues to go until it finds a
Yep.
way to go where it wants to go. And you have leaks in your roof. because it found that space finally after so long, finds that pathway. So the same thing with our own brains and minds. We get into that. That's what I was going to say earlier, Ben. Is to your point in regards to the pathways have already been laid out, and so a lot of people who have been alcoholics and drug addicts and things of that nature, they have to veer away from all of that because one drink can reestablish that connection and they're
Yeah.
back into
Yeah.
old habits again. So that is so important for us to remember. And it's great to celebrate. Hey, I've been, 5 years using a
Yeah.
rag now or a wash rag now. Praise the Lord. I get my my medallion, because I've done that. But seriously, it's great to have those rewards when we're
Yeah.
able to successfully do something that's best for our life.
Do you think it's possible that most of the things that we struggle with that we would like to change are reinforced physiologically and chemically in our brains and in our systems, so they become systemic issues and not just choice issues? And I think it's important to investigate the nature of the thing, the why, as you mentioned, Tom, the pathway, Ben, the need. Why do we need to go about this thing? Sometimes it's not a healthy motivation. Sometimes we don't like ourselves. Sometimes we have very low self-esteem, and that's a real problem. And we want to change just because we don't like who we are. And there are a lot of people who go to church and a lot of people who refuse to go to church because they don't like who they are or how they feel about a thing. And so they'll hear a message, they'll read a devotional, and I'm going to make a change, and it doesn't work. And the shame, which is one of the huge reasons why change doesn't last, is that when we fail in the change, shame reinforces how dumb we are, how much we fail, how no good we are, And then there are people out there.
Wow.
Well, there are people out there that don't even know why we're having this conversation. They don't want to change. They've never thought about change. You bring change up one more time, I'm going to slug you in your mouth. Don't do it. They just, I got to go fix something in my garage. Shut up about change. They're just different people. I'm sorry. I watched a lot of Jonathan Winters and Robin Williams.
Wow.
And I think to your point, it's just that don't commit to making a change when you're on some kind of high, whether it's spiritual or chemical or whatever, because you're putting yourself back into the shame loop, right? And you don't even know it, and we're doing it, right? It's the same thing, like, even in our darkest pit, like that might be where we identify some things we need to change, but not always the clearest place to decide how we're going to do it or what we're actually going to do. And so fine, but sometimes we don't need somebody to force us to change, because that's not real change, right? Like,
No.
it's the same thing, like, don't drink, don't smoke, right? God never cares about the external appearances of things, right? I mean, he's so clear about that over and over through the Old Testament all the way into the New. And he's like, but he wants real change inside. And that's what God brings and delivers to us through the Holy Spirit. And so, and we don't do it on our own, ever. Even if we feel like we are, we're never, as believers, we don't do any of this on our own.
No.
It's not our own strength. It's not our own power. And so, it sounds almost cliche, but I started with, talking about love the Lord your God with all your, right? If we focus on, all right, how am I going to love the Lord my God in this moment, in this day, in this week, right? Changes will happen. And it'll be clear to us what what God is calling us into changing.
I just wanted.
Yeah,
Don't
that's
mad at
good.
me if I just threw one more thing out there.
That's why I was going.
Taylor says what she was going to say.
No, I was going to say that's what I was going to do. Just throw one more thing. I just wanted to talk about the book "Switch on Your Brain" by Dr. Caroline Leaf. She actually has a 21-day detox in that, but she explains to us, she explains to the reader why we do the things that we do and how we can start changing that. She does it from a biblical perspective and also from a scientific perspective.
So I didn't bring this up earlier, and I should have because we're out of time. But when thinking and praying on change over the years, this came to my spirit one day. You need to concentrate on restorative change. I heard that, restorative change. And so as I prayed about that, and I asked the Lord to help me understand what that means, what that looks like, He led me to the scriptures that dealt with crucify your flesh, die daily, all that. And I said, that doesn't make any sense to me. That's not restorative. That's, we're ending something. And it became so clear to me that when the Lord tells us to die to self, we have to ask which self. He's not asking you to change who you are as a person. He made you the way you are. He wants you to lay down and crucify all of the selves that you've taken on to please people, to fit a role, to do things that you really don't have to do because you think God cares and He doesn't really want you to do that thing. So what you're doing in restorative change is you're just simply trying to remove these artificial barriers that were added to your life and restore your sense of wholeness, who you are as a real person, authentically. That made sense to me.
Yeah, that's powerful. That's a powerful thought. And I would encourage everyone listening, if you're listening to this on a recording, to pause that and reflect on that thought that Ken just brought to our attention just now. But I want to share from a biblical perspective, Romans 12:2. We've heard this before. Do not copy the behavior and customs of this world, or do not be conformed to this world, but be transformed, or let God transform you into a new person by changing the way you think. Then you will learn to know God's will for you, which is good, pleasing, and perfect. And I think it's a powerful thought, Ken, bringing that up in regards to knowing who we are, because a lot of us have a lot of those selves you were talking about. The one that's the image that's been cast on us from our parents. I want you to be an Olympic or a doctor, whatever. And that's just not the mold that we were cut from.
Right.
And so we may go through our whole life as a doctor, but we never had the passion. We were never built for that, but we did it because it was an expectation put on us. And so, as you said, we were made, the Bible says that we were fearfully and wonderfully made. So there's something about us, the way we are made to fit, and we just got to find where we fit, right? And I think that's the biggest thing, is finding that space where we fit best and where we can become a part of the body. I believe that even churches have the right people most of the time, the right people in it. And I say this a lot. I don't want any Jonahs at my church, right? If you're not supposed to be here, I don't want you here. But I think that if we have the right people in the right seats, it really makes it work. And we're empowering those people to, God's called them to be, and not the expectations of others. And I think that will really change the dynamics of any workplace or community when we are functioning in the gifts that we've been given. Praise the Lord.
You're breaking up there, Tom. You're breaking up pretty badly.
And that's not a good. You froze, and it was not good.
We're talking about wholeness, and you're fragmenting.
Yeah.
this problem.
You look like us.
This whole thing about selves that we bring on, it's one of the primary drivers of midlife change.
Yeah.
We reach a point usually around our 40s where we're sick and tired of being the selves that we took on that didn't have anything to do with who we really are.
Yeah.
When the Bible says to raise a child in the way he should go or she should go, it's not talking about moral values. It's talking about try to understand what their purpose is in life. Try to understand why God gave you this child and help them. If that child seems to have an interest in working with wood, don't put pressure on him to go to a 4-year school. Help him work with wood. Don't make him into something he's not intended to be. And our society has added a tremendous amount of pressure. So a lot of people have these selves so deeply tattooed in their soul from their family, from their church, from the culture. And when they can't measure up, the shame cycle is there.
Yeah.
And it's defeatist in nature. And so that, in other words, by its very existence, shame is a defeatist emotion. It will never bring good about. Shame does not bring good about. What brings good about? Respect, love. You're not going to change if you're ashamed of yourself. Every time you fail, you're going to say you're an idiot. But if you love yourself the way God loves you and knows you, you will know that all things are possible to him that believes.
Yeah.
I got to stop because
That's
I
good.
haven't in a couple of weeks and it's coming on me, baby. Oh, good Lord, help me, Jesus. Okay, I'm done. I've said that 3 times already. I'm the pastor that says, and in conclusion, and in closing remark.
Go ahead, Ben. You might want to close it out because I don't know how much this connection is going to hold. So go ahead.
All right, I'll close this out. So thank you for watching. If you have any questions, be sure to drop them into the chat. We'll still see it afterward, but you can also contact any of us. You can get a hold of Talora or me at our website, quiescounseling.com. Our email's there, our phone is there. There's even a place you can just contact us right on the website. So it's pretty simple. Ken, how do we get a hold of you?
KenSheltonInfo@gmail.com.
All right. And then Tom?
Pastor Tom Ray at gmail.com.
All right. So thank you all for joining us, and we will see you on the next